Hey, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if you're in the West Coast or west of Minnesota. But thanks for another fun episode, I expect, from Real Stories from the Trenches here with Infinite Green. We've got a very special guest today, Mo Dastigier. I wish we had like the three-time client bathrobe like they do
Banner.
on SNL, like what they do for the five time host kind of thing. But Mo's a great partner of ours, great client, and someone that we've really learned a lot from over the years, and shared a lot of fun times in the trenches. So we thought it'd be great to have you on, Mo. So thanks again for coming on and
Sure.
joining Valerie and I as we kind of extend into client side, partner side, and kind of some fun stories around that. And that's what we're here to do today. So again, thanks for coming on, and welcome to the party.
I love it. Thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, any conversation with Infinite Green tends to be, for me at least, an interesting conversation. I love talking to you guys. So now we'll just talk to each other in front of a whole bunch of other people.
Exactly. And interesting can be, in quotes, right? It could be funny, could be weird, could be whatever. But we've had a lot of experiences. So again, it's
Yeah.
kind of fun to look back on kind of all it's been what, about 10 years, I think?
Yep.
Maybe
Almost
a
coming
little bit
up.
more.
Yep.
Yeah, and we met at Sears Home Services, but
Yep.
why don't you give a little bit of your background? You've got just a fun story about where you've come from and where you've kind of gotten to before you've eventually landed at Kyndryl there. But why don't
Yeah.
you give us a little of your background and your story?
Yeah. It's good. Yeah. It is. In fact, just before I start, it is coming up to 10 years. And can you believe I moved here to the United States in the suburbs of Chicago for a job with Sears, and that was in 2015. So it's almost
Yeah,
going to be 10
Yeah.
years now. And I met you guys shortly after, courtesy our common boss, Sean Skelly, a few months after I joined. But yeah, I've had an interesting journey. I started. I mean, early days of my career started straight out of college with Deloitte Consulting, and I'm a product of, I'm the 90s child, right? I mean, 90s in the college era was when tech and everything else was coming up to speed. Computer labs. I was thinking about, our conversation today. I'm like, where do I start? And my first brush with computers was a neighbor's house, and then computer lab. When that was the thing in school, had a class
yeah,
which was computer lab, and you went to that class and learned all about computers.
Mhm.
And me and my cousin, who we used to go to college together in India, and we used, take classes on C and and learning how to write Java. And
yeah,
I was thinking about things like wireless access protocol, like WAP capabilities came on when it's going to go on cell phones, and we are like, oh my god, we got to learn this, and because it's going to change the world the way it's just cool things like that really introduced you to technology and programming. And anyway, I started my career with Deloitte. Had nothing to do with tech, but learned, started my career there more on the ops side. Early on, I mean, Deloitte really shaped me into the professional world of just learning how things happen in the outside world when you're young and you're hungry and you want to learn how to do things.
yeah.
I'm an early employee of Amazon. I'm the Amazon Hyderabad in India, or Amazon India, one of the first 10 employees that joined them. It was a great school to learn. This is early 2000s. I mean, it's nothing close to where Amazon is today. When I
Right.
started with Amazon, they used to work on only the category they worked on was book, music, video, and DVDs. That's the only thing they sold, nothing else. So very interesting. We used to hear things like Mechanical Turk and Elastic Compute Cloud and things like that. And some of us got an opportunity to play around in it when it in its early stages in infancy. So this is like pre um, AWS and pre a lot of things that
Right.
Amazon does today. I mean, Amazon was another great school for me. Learned a lot from the leaders I worked with. Had an opportunity to come to Seattle very often, so learned a lot there with learning there. And then from there I moved to Europe, lived in Switzerland, worked for pharma companies, Novartis and Roche. Brought me back into tech full force, but it was more on the COTS application portfolio, so custom applications in the clean apps field. and working really there in the technology space and working with a lot of internal, external tech talent in order to try to move that application ecosystem into the future. And then, of course, work with a lot of package solutions. That's, I think, the first time I came across Salesforce. Started working in SAP
Hmm.
projects, etc. So learned a lot there. Somehow find myself into mergers and acquisitions, and acquisition
You just
integration.
fell into that, right?
Fell
Just
into
oh
it.
yeah,
Yeah, I just fell into it. Novartis and Roche were buying companies, and
yeah,
got pulled into one project and the next one in integrations and in Roche, and then found myself into divestitures with Roche. That was the last project I was part of, where I was part of a leadership team that was looking at divesting. From a tech side, I was responsible on the technology side, but we're looking at divesting $2.5 billion diabetes care business from Roche and standing it on its own. So pretty large, significantly multi-year project on trying to divest, which was again, the project budget itself was like 400 million euros. Right, so just this how intense it was. So again, everything was new. Everything we were doing a new system implementations, a lot of package solutions, Salesforce, Microsoft 365, SAP, etc. So a lot of interesting. And my journey has been a continuous journey of learning, as I'm trying to explain to you. Then when I came to Sears, it was all about transformation, right? It was all about separating home services from the mothership, but at the same time, growing it, sustaining it, and trying to transform it into more a digital business as opposed to an analog business. Inherited a whole bunch of everything from mainframes to custom built application that only two people in a $3 billion business know how to run that system,
right,
right?
right.
And you remember Caboodle, the CRM that we inherited. There were literally
Yep.
two people who knew how to write code in that system. To where we brought you guys in, where we were trying to build products that were very relevant for the home services business. Everything from know your home to decision science platforms to Service Live to things that we were tinkering around with you guys, which was we're sitting on a whole bunch of these audio files. Can we build a system around it where you can just use your phone, listen to an audio clip that, or listen to audio coming from a washer or a dryer and diagnose
Right.
if we know what the root cause of the issue is, parts prediction. So I really got into the product engineering side of it with Sears because of it was a wildly interesting area for me to bring some of these products to life. And then went to Cresco in cannabis startup in was part of the company where it was very small, and then it grew to 800-900 million in revenue, unknown. When I went to Cresco, got to work with a lot of talent. Cresco only had email, calendar, and a few systems running around, but we had to build that company from the ground up, really determining build versus buy. What are we going to build? What are we going to buy? Because certain things you cannot operate with because of the regulations. Certain things
Yeah.
we can build IP around. Very, very interesting journey. And then, just has led me to Kyndryl. And now I'm working on, again, brought me back to my product engineering side, where we're building a digital platform for IT asset management for a portfolio that manages about $5 billion worth of assets, where we are not only gathering the information on the assets, but trying to build a product which allows us to optimize, bundle, and create a recommendation engine where for
Hmm.
managed services where we manage these ecosystem for our clients, we want to get to a stage where we can make intelligent recommendations on where they can save costs, where they can bundle certain applications, where they can optimize based on usage patterns, based on certain licensing conditions. Our product also will allow us to be compliant with our publishers when it comes
Hmm.
to audit and compliance. From a regulatory standpoint, we want to be compliant. So a lot of interesting things that we're doing in that ecosystem. And then I have the privilege also of working on the procurement side of applications, where I'm trying to take data on, we buy $11 billion worth of purchases that we make externally across the company. So really use the data around what we are buying and how frequently are we buying and who we are buying it for, and marrying it with our asset data to start thinking and going in the space of pricing engines and analytics, so that when we are creating solutions for our customers, we are creating the most optimal solutions for our customers
It's
from a
funny.
pricing asset standpoint. So, it's been a journey. It's a very interesting journey. It just keeps me
It's
in a continuous learning format.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's really funny when you look at. Thank you for giving us that backdrop. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
our audience probably is very interested just how you got there. But I always tell people Mo's one of those guys that's had like 6 careers in his life, and it just is interesting how you find yourself in those kind
yeah,
of situations where you're like, hey, I've never done that before, but yeah, I can go help run a $400 million transformation for a company. And again, when you have that level of curiosity, but you also have like the wherewithal of saying, I'm not just defined by the role that I'm in. I'm not just an IT leader. I'm not just a
yeah,
business leader. It's kind of all of that, right?
yeah.
And funny story about Cresco, when you were there, you were actually responsible for Valerie learning a little bit more of a formal golf game, right, Valerie? As we were downtown Chicago and had some time to spend and went to Five Iron, I believe was the
Right.
Yeah.
the name of the place, and we played, right, Valerie? And
Yeah.
so now you've played more rounds of golf and kind of learned that, but kind of an interesting thing. But my whole point of that is you've had like these opportunities to do once in a career kind of things in transformation in a number of different places, and I think you're kind of wired around that transformation, look at things a little bit differently, and continue to be curious and learn as you go. So I think that's why we've had fun kind of following you and being brought in on some of that journey with you as well. But
Yeah.
No,
it's been
no,
fun.
thank you. No, it is, and you're absolutely right. A lot has to do with curiosity. My choice of roles and the kind of roles I pick up are genuinely, they start with just natural curiosity. Wait a minute, I haven't done that before. Let me
Right.
go find out more about it. And even things like AI, we've talked about this before. We've had debates, with Infinite Green. We've sat down and said, where is AI going and things like that. And it just naturally, it's a curious topic for me. And I learn as I go, only because I'm trying to understand what's the cross section between actually um, taking some of what's happening in the world today when it comes to AI and Gen AI and things like that, and what is the practical applicability in the business? Like I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the kind of person who likes to do things for the sake of doing it. I
Mm-hmm.
like
Right.
to do things because it's driving an outcome for a business. Like
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
like to believe that technology is heading in a direction. In the last decade, if you will, decade and a half, leaders myself who've been CIOs, CTOs, etc. before, like we are not just the keepers of systems. We are now people who pair with chief revenue officers or chief sales officers, etc., and trying to figure out how do you capture more market share? Like, how do I grow top of the line value? How do I improve the way my business operates? Like, how do I remove waste? Or how do I improve my response time? Like, those things have become like that. My curiosity has led me and keeps me engaged in a lot of those conversations, which are more not about, hey Mo, when can you deliver the system, but more about, hey Mo, we're trying to solve this problem. Like, how do we solve it? Like, how will you use what you know in order to help me get to that outcome? Those conversations keep me very excited because that's where I like to be. I like to be in those conversations. I'm less of the guy who you talk to just to make sure everybody's conference room equipment is working, which I'll do, but I'm not the guy to engage at that level. I'm the guy you talk to when it's like, I'm trying to increase market share. This is a
Mm-hmm.
problem that I'm trying to solve.
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeah.
ideas do you have? How do we? I mean, you and I, we've talked about this, Valerie. I mean, when we were at Cresco, when I engaged you guys, it was about we're trying to use technology to improve the user experience inside the stores.
Yep.
We're trying to increase the stickiness with customers. We're trying to improve velocity of repeat. Like, how do we do that? How do we bring customers into a physical store where they regard us as experts, where they look at us that they get a very differentiated experience when they walk in, as opposed to a transactional experience? That's how we started our conversation at
Yeah.
Cresco.
Yeah, and I would
Um,
I would say that's one of the reasons that, our partnerships have been so successful is because you come from, looking at IT with a very customer-centric approach and, also focusing on change management, right? You have
yeah,
always been like, okay, how is my customers going to react? How are my employees going to adopt this? And that's something that Infinite Green carries true in really all
yeah,
of our engagements is balancing that cutting edge technology and system enablement
yeah,
tools with what's practical and what's going to, really solve, sometimes simple, but often complex use cases and those
Yeah,
business problems that you can't really tackle just by throwing more bodies at the
correct,
problem, right? They
correct.
really need some of that support, and leveraging your expertise has been a huge accelerator, I think, for the companies that we've
Yeah, and
partnered together on.
I think at our core, and I said this to John, I say this to John very often. I think and Scott is your partner, the trifecta, the partner in crime. I think at our core, we're all product managers, we're product engineers. We like to solve business problems. Like if you think about why Infinite Green started, that's what I think we connected. You started with trying to improve the experience in Best Buy, right? And
Yep.
all the tentacles that connected into why customers were not having a good experience, and how could you improve the experience in on phones with IVR or within the store, how people engage. And when I first met with Infinite Green, I was trying to figure out how at Sears we are going to, and Chip Smith, when I was CTO, Chip was the CMO, chief marketing officer and sales officer. He and I would spend a lot of time trying to understand, how do you get people to come in the top of the funnel? How do you
Yeah.
have them convert into a transaction? And if they do convert into a transaction, how do you manage that relationship? Like, and that started with how people interacted with the website, how people came into the phone, how people
Right.
then talked to an agent, what did the agent say, what questions did they ask, then what did the
Which for
text say? Like,
which
if
for
you, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for traditional retail, it's typically how fast can you get them into our store and transacting
Yeah,
versus how do I look at the relationship and say, wow, I don't necessarily want to continue to feed I'll buy some tech, and when it doesn't fit maybe a need
yeah,
I have, I'll throw it away and go get a new one.
yeah,
We all know that we consume at a different pace today than we did even 10 years ago. But
hmm,
from a capability perspective, how do you get the most out of that? And to your point, Mo, the relationships that we build along the way, those are
hmm,
valuable, right?
right,
And valuable in a way of not just, well, they're not going to churn or they're not going to go to a different place to get services or products or whatever, but how do we become that authority? And I think you were going down that path a little bit more too, from a product manager, product
Mhm.
engineering perspective.
yep,
The platforms and the rules have changed. You don't have to go that traditional route, but you do if you start with the experience in mind first. Then the technology and all of the the work around that tends to be much more focused to that end experience versus, well, we're
hmm,
just going to roll out and then release our way into a better product. You can do things differently, excuse me, in if you think about CX and kind of the overall customer experience and employee experience first.
yeah. And it's a great question, because I think only a few companies like Apple during the Steve Jobs era have the privilege of saying, "I'll build a product that I know customers would want." That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen very often, right?
Right, right,
Most often, the it is, "Hey, there is a problem. There is a point of friction somewhere in the way somebody is engaging with me or my product, and I need to now figure out what that point of friction is and solve for it," right?
yeah, yeah,
Or in the business situation, you have a business objective, which is you need to go execute. So you need to you spend the time trying to understand the why. And
Mhm.
once you
right,
you know I tell people, I tell my teams all the time, if you understand the why, the what and the how becomes infinitely a lot more easier,
yep,
because you know what you're marching towards. It's harder when you don't have a clear sense of the why, when you're throwing all these bodies and this horsepower behind something which gets into this continuous dev loop cycle, which is never ending, where the customer is not satisfied with the product they're getting, and then you're
right,
not satisfied that you built all the stuff that the customer is not using, right?
Mhm.
So I think, which I usually partner with Infinite Green with you guys really well, is we spend the time with our stakeholders trying to understand, hey, what are you trying to get to? Like, what are you trying to solve for? What are
mm-hmm.
the points of friction? Where is the experience failing? Like, where and you and I worked on a project like this before. On your online journey, where are customers abandoning you? Where is the drop off
Right,
occurring? Where are you losing a customer? Let's go solve for that, right? Don't try to just rewire your entire website because
Mhm.
you think customers are not converting. Let's
right,
try to follow the breadcrumbs and figure out where they drop. so that you can solve for where exactly the friction occurs, or you're losing the customer from an engagement standpoint, because that's where you will see the conversion
It's
improvement.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And Valerie, you've got that experience in hospitality as well. It's not just telling your employees or your partners, hey, spend less time on the phone because it costs us too much. Like, let's get rid of the interactions that shouldn't be there, that are bad experiences for the customer, for the employee, and for the company, right? Get rid of the things that shouldn't be there so you can spend more time on the relationship that you have with someone in front of you on the phone, on video, in your store, in your hotel, or whatever. And instead of saying, well, how can we optimize the if and create more efficiency? Because that was in the contact center space, that was always the case for what, 20 years, was how can I reduce handle time? How can I reduce the cost
Right.
of doing business? But in all reality, to your point about maybe the IVR, or maybe the way that someone arrived at the 1-800 number, was because they didn't figure out all the other steps in
Correct.
before that, and it was just noise in the system because they didn't have anywhere else to go to get an answer to a question that they had. Right. So it's, to your point, like solving the problem based on where you want to go from an experience lens, is a really smart way of looking at how, business can be done looking forward versus fixing all the stuff from the bottoms up, which is where I think AI has really given people a little bit of this conundrum of, how do I launch and get into the space, but then am I really thinking about the right use case for this to begin with, so that I understand how AI is going to impact my business and customer and agent going forward.
Yeah, there's kind of an art between really kind of taking advantage of these emerging tech tools and leveraging efficiencies and automations, and really the digital transformation, but really preserving and protecting the human touch and the feeling. And so that's why I think a lot of our engagements really start with those experience anchors, and what do we
Yeah.
want the customer to feel at all levels and at all touch points, and how do we accomplish that either through tools and an experience, or where are the appropriate ways to protect that human touch and interaction.
But absolutely what you guys said. The only but I'm going to add is the in my past roles, and by the way, I've had the privilege, believe it or not, of writing my own job description in all my executive roles. I've made it up as I
That's
go
because
along.
people don't know how to figure out what you're about,
Yeah.
Mo. You're
So
you're an
no,
you're an
but
anomaly.
I've been lucky. I've been lucky. But in my current digital role, I've had the privilege of a lot of support from the leaders that I work with. I have the privilege, and I agree. I'm coming to the point that you guys are making. I have the privilege of not only sitting on the tech side, but I have a process engineering team,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because that's usually the component that is forgotten, that tech, and I'm guilty of it too, that you try to solve everything you're trying to solve from a technology standpoint, and you forget that there's a significant process re-engineering component which you're not solving for. You could build all the sexy products and tools you want in the world, but if the process, that 1-800 example that you talked about,
Mhm.
is driving customers into a different behavioral pattern, you have not
Yeah.
solved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Right. So I have the
Right.
privilege right now in my current role of actually developing and building a process engineering team that I didn't have the privilege, because I used to be on the other side of the fence. So I used to work with people who own the process, but in my current role, I own the process. So I am
Nice.
now rewiring as much as the process
Mhm. Yeah.
that drives the improvement, as much as I'm driving the technology side of it, saying how many things of these result in a bad experience or a bad decision because of an old archaic process, or a process that is
Yeah.
broken, or a process that does not comply with a governance manual of some sort,
Yep.
or
Right.
it's driving the bad behavior because our business has changed but our process has not changed.
Or it's always
So
just because it's in the upper right hand quadrant of the Gartner
100%.
Magic Quadrant, right?
Mhm.
It's like this religion conversation about, well, Salesforce is better than this, or
Yeah.
Amazon is better than Google,
Mhm.
or whatever. And those, I call them religion conversations, are, well, just because you're comfortable or just because it's the best in class doesn't mean it's the best for you.
For you. Yeah.
It-
Yeah. Yeah.
it-
And I think
yeah.
that's a huge point, Mo, in bridging those silos between, IT and CX and operations. And, we've seen so many times where, tech may be implemented to solve for a problem, but then processes don't get updated to align with that.
Correct.
And so
Right.
now we have disjointed experiences, and we don't have that customer continuity, whether it's across touch points or even within a single experience. And so
Yeah.
having that, you've developed that within your org to be able to bridge those silos kind of automatically, but, being intentional about that through transformational projects.
If I could go back in time, I would, if there was any advice to be given here, I'm being a little presumptuous, but if I could go back in time in any one of these roles, I could have a process function. I would immediately, under my technology leadership, I'd have a process function.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because now that I have it, I recognize the improvements I'm able to drive. Many of them actually do not need a tech solution, they just need a
Mhm.
process solution,
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
right? But there is the default assumption, usually in many companies, that the solve to every problem is a tech solution. Actually, it's not. It
Mhm.
just,
Right.
you need to rethink your process end to
Yeah,
end.
you can curve jump if you figure out the root cause or the root process that should be from a customer lens, an employee lens, and a
Yeah,
business lens, right? You can curve jump on the technology discussion and investment if you really spend the right time, to your point, on kind of understanding what the destination experience needs to be, understand the process that should be versus the one that it currently is or we've always done.
yep,
And then when you make those tech decisions, it's much more future proof than, oh, okay, it's point in time kind of management of that.
yeah.
Anyway, and real quick, we've got 2 minutes left, 2.5 minutes left. I need to ask, I need to shift gears a little bit here, but what's your favorite podcast right now? What do you listen to?
So I have professionally, I like to listen to A16Z, Andy Horowitz podcast, right? And there are a lot
Yeah,
of startup ones that try to listen
it's a
to.
great one. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Kalanikis has a great one, so I kind of listen to that one. But the guilty pleasure when I'm working out in the evenings is to listen to Theo Van,
oh
Oh
right?
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, the weekend pass. It's just Theo. Theo is just so funny, right? I,
yeah.
I
He's
love
out there.
this.
He's in and out, like all over the place, right?
I that Andrew Schultz is flagrant. That's another good one. I mean, those are guilty pleasures. When I'm working out, instead of listening to music, in the last couple of months, I've kind of shifted gears into listening to these guys. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I mean, they bring like genuine, like almost authenticity to how they approach certain topics, and I enjoy them. So
Yeah.
those
yeah.
are my favorite.
Yeah.
Any playlist? Oh, go ahead,
I
Valerie.
was going to say, I'm nothing personal with David Sampson. It's like a good mix of like sports and business. And so
Yeah,
that's,
yeah. It's
that's how I
another
stay
another great
interested.
one.
Yeah.
What?
So
Yeah,
I'm a so playlist. Yeah, I honestly, I've now run through my playlist so much that I just prefer. I like the Spotify DJ, how it's learned my patterns of
yeah,
what I like to listen to, and it makes some interesting recommendations. I like it. I like the fact that
yeah,
it tries to mix up things based on my hearing patterns. That AI agent is getting really intelligent
yeah.
over a period of time. So, yeah, in fact, I used to have a regular set of playlists, but once I got hooked to the DJ, I just listened to the DJ
Yeah, it's
because
funny. I think that's pretty common. We were just on a call before this around, talent staffing and kind of the UI and the interfaces that companies smartly are building
yeah,
to kind of gather talent or gather kind of the quality of an employee or a potential employer, a career change or whatever. They're starting to build things like what Spotify does or Apple does,
yeah,
music does, to try to hone you in on a genre or
yeah.
hone you in on a kind of a category, but not pin you down to a specific band or a specific thing, right? So I think that's really a good future thing. Thanks for indulging us. Last, before Anna pops up a kind of our survey of, hey, what do people want to hear? What are, just kind of a shameless plug here, what's kind of the most valuable thing about Infinite Green that you've seen over the years that you can just count on day in and day out from a partnership perspective or from an interaction or relationship perspective? Why is it that Infinite Green and Mo and the companies that you've graced with your kind of insight and talent, why do those things work, and what is it that you look for in partnerships? Not
Yeah.
necessarily with us, but why does it work?
No, it's a great question because we've had a long relationship and there's a reason for that. I'd like to believe that I have a huge bias in working with smart and talented people. Not only because it allows me to meet the outcome, but it allows me to learn. Again, if you heard anything from me in the last 29 minutes, is that I feel like I'm on this continuous journey on trying to improve upon myself. I'm my
Hmm.
most harshest critic, so I try to learn and adapt and evolve. So I've had a
And us
privilege of working
too.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like to work with, really, I've had a privilege of working with team members, people who work for me. Widely, they teach me things that I don't know. In that same
Yeah.
vein, I've had an opportunity to work with you guys for such a long time because I learned from you guys. I like Infinite Green, your genesis, your origin story, if you will, that you came from the trenches. You
Hmm.
worked in the lines, you've worked with customers. Valerie, you've been at the front desk at five-star hotels, you've seen points of friction. So you don't come at it from a abstract textbook point of view. You look at it from a, hey, I've been there. I've seen this.
Mhm.
I've stood in line. I've serviced a customer. I know how painful it is. And you guys haven't forgotten that. I think it's a big part of your DNA that you try
Yeah.
to put yourself in the shoes of a customer or the shoes of a client and try to look at it from that perspective, right? And I
Hmm.
like the fact that that's one fact. And the other fact I like about Infinite Green is when you're done, you come to me and say, okay, I'm done. You don't need me here anymore. So you're not there trying to find your next engagement within the company. You have a very good understanding of what you brought in for. Once you solve it, you're the first ones to raise your hand and say, "That's it, I'm done. Unless you need me more, I'm out."
Yeah.
Right? So so
Well,
I
thank
I
you.
enjoy working with people who are smart. They're honest. They are forthcoming, and they're wired like me, which is solve the problem and get the heck
Yeah.
out of the way. Right? Once it's
Yeah.
done, you're done. So.
I love that. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well,
Thanks.
that, what's that?
I just said thanks. Thanks for
Oh,
sharing
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's great. It's nice to get that feedback, and obviously, we look forward to the next engagement. But these conversations are always helpful for us, and hopefully to our audience. And we're trying to bring a different perspective to the table here on the trenches. To your point, and there is some of that genuineness in the reality of where we've come from, but the journey that we've been on with you and in your journey, as well as kind of how we approach the market. We're not that lingering consulting company. We just do like to get in. We're not the tweak it 1 degree left or right company. We're very much a transformation company. And as you think about IT and business and AI and all the things that are disruptive in conversation or clarity today, I think it's a great opportunity for us to have those career projects that we work on
Yeah.
and be able to learn and do those things together with our partners
Yeah,
and
and
our
and, and,
clients. So
and I like to fight in the front line in the trenches, and I like the fact that you guys usually are there joining me.
yeah,
For
Right?
sure.
absolutely.
That's where I like to operate, deep in the trenches, sleeves up, in the trenches, in the muck, trying to figure it out. And I
Yes.
enjoy Infinite Green being with me when I'm doing that. So thank you.
Well, thank you for spending the time, Mo and Valerie, and obviously to our audience too. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give us some feedback. Mo's available. He's a great advisor in the community and in investment and other board positions where he's constantly trying to create this matchmaking experience. But we love that story, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And we'll be back soon with another story, Infinite Green Stories from the Trenches.
Thank you,
See you
guys.
later. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.
Bye.